What's going on, you guys? In today's video, we're talking about some of the differences between Salt Lake City and Provo. These are two major cities here along the Wasatch Front, and honestly, two cities that you might be considering making a move to. If you want to know more about these two cities and how they compare to each other to find out which one's right for you, then make sure to watch all the way to the end. Let's get started. As we jump into this, I do want to mention that we're going to cover everything from population to religion to access to outdoor activities and a whole lot more. I'm going to be covering some of just the basics. I'm going to make some generalities here, and I'm also going to assume some things as well. So not all of this information is going to be 100% certain, but it will give you a very close idea of how these two cities compare. So with that being said, let's jump into item number one, which is the population. What is the current population of Salt Lake City? Well, if you're looking at Salt Lake City proper, we're right around 200,000 people. For the sake of this video, I'm comparing mostly Salt Lake City proper and Provo proper. However, I do want to cover some additional population on this topic, because when you're looking at the population, Salt Lake City proper is just 200,000, but if you look at the Salt Lake Metro, you're over 1 million people. In fact, it's roughly 1.2 million people in the Salt Lake Metro area. Now, if we look at Provo proper, we're actually sitting at about 116,000 people, whereas the entire metro area is roughly 500,000. So that's how the population compares. Salt Lake City is bigger. The metro area is significantly bigger, over double the population of the Provo metro. So it's important to kind of realize this, and then also looking forward to what the growth is going to be. Salt Lake City is mostly developed. The area of downtown Salt Lake right now is very commercial and business heavy, but it is becoming more and more residential. But on the other hand, you've got Provo, which is already very heavily residential, and it's expected to grow very quickly over the next 30 years. In fact, Utah County as a whole is expected to double in population over the next 30 years, from roughly 600,000 people to over 1.2 million. So you're going to see much higher density in Salt Lake City proper, especially in the downtown area, whereas in Provo, it's going to be less dense, it's going to be more spread out, and you're going to have growth in that area. And as we start to run out of land in Provo, you will see that a lot of that land starts to convert to higher density stuff. You know, you're going to tear down an old house that sits on, let's say, half an acre, and the city is going to want to see 5 townhomes put in there. We're already seeing that in Salt Lake City, where we're seeing a lot of these older homes that are just, you know, beyond repair being torn down and then converted into different townhome communities or even condo communities. I think that Provo is going to see the same type of growth, but it's probably at least 10, 15, 20 years out, at least in my opinion, before we see any major changes in that area. All right, let's talk about culture. Provo is going to be very laid back. It's going to be very quiet. It's going to be very family focused. It's going to be a pretty quiet town for the most part. Salt Lake, you know, compared to a lot of other big cities, it's still relatively quiet, but that is where you're going to find a lot more of your nightlife. That's where you're going to find different events, you're going to find concerts, you're going to find bars, you're going to find clubs, you're going to find everything that you want to do as far as nightlife goes, and especially like high-end restaurants should include that in there. You're going to find that in Salt Lake City. So if that stuff is important to you, Salt Lake City proper is definitely going to be the better option for you. Whereas if you want a quieter life, if you don't care about all that stuff, you just want quiet and peace of mind, Provo might be better for you on that route. Next up, I want to talk a little bit about religion, because there is such a huge religion difference between these two cities, and I think it's important to know. So I'm just throwing out some facts here. I'm not discriminating one way or another. I don't care if you care about religion or you don't. I'm just throwing it out here in the video so that you know. So Provo is going to be very high population of LDS, probably somewhere between 75 to 80% would be my guess. The church, the Mormon Church, does not release statistics on a city basis, and they're not always accurate, because sometimes the way that they count that population is not always accurate as to how many members are active. So Provo, they're going to say roughly 75 to 80%, at least that's my estimate, whereas Salt Lake City, especially the downtown area, is only going to be about 25, maybe 30%. Let's move on to jobs. So the jobs that you're going to find in Salt Lake City, especially downtown, are going to be mostly business and finance jobs, whereas in Provo, you're going to find also some business jobs. There are some banks who have headquarters there, or at least have branches, or kind of their corporate side, and you're also going to find a lot of healthcare jobs in Provo as well. So if you're in the healthcare space, aerospace or you're in banking, that could work in Provo. If you're in the banking or finance, you could work in downtown. Even, you know, healthcare, there is a fairly good number of healthcare jobs around the downtown area, especially because of the University of Utah, the Huntsman Cancer Institute. There's a lot of healthcare jobs there as well. So either one will work for you. Those are kind of the two main sectors. I should also mention that Provo, and especially the cities to the north of Provo, do have a very large tech scene. That's kind of the southern end of the Silicon Slopes. So you're seeing a lot of tech companies come into this area as well, because we have a very highly educated workforce and a great quality of life for the employees that they're bringing into the state here. All right, one topic you've probably been waiting for. Let's talk a little bit about home prices. How do the home prices in Provo and Salt Lake City compare? So Salt Lake City, your median price range is going to be roughly $375,000 to $380,000. It's in the high 300s in this city. You also have roughly 300 to 400 sales that happen every single month. So there's a much higher volume of sales in this area. Whereas in Provo, your median price range is just under $300,000. So almost $100,000 cheaper, but you do also only have roughly 60 to 100 sales that happen within Provo proper each month. Talking a little bit about rents are going to be a little bit cheaper in Provo. For, let's say, a 3-bedroom apartment, you're going to be roughly $1,500 a month, whereas in Salt Lake, in the downtown area, you're going to be roughly $1,700 to $1,800 a month. In Salt Lake, you will have a much higher variety, especially if you're looking for something luxury. That's where you're going to find it. I've seen 3-bedroom units go upwards of $3,000, $4,000, even $5,000. So you can find your luxury units in Salt Lake City proper. As far as Provo though, it's going to be mostly the kind of that mid-range stuff, because that's what gets rented the easiest. There are some higher end units, but there's not very many of them. All right, talking a little bit about the access to outdoor recreation. If you're living downtown Salt Lake, you're going to have easy access to some of the hikes that are to the north on Capitol Hill. You're also going to have Emigration Canyon, which is to the east. There are also some great hikes up there, and even just some great mountain sightseeing up there as well. If you want to go skiing, if you want to go hiking or rock climbing or anything like that, you do have easy access to the rest of the Wasatch Mountains. Further to the south, you've got Mill Creek Canyon, you've got Big Cottonwood Canyon, Little Cottonwood Canyon. There's a ton of canyons that you can get access to, probably 30 to 45 minutes away, depending on traffic and which one you're going to. If you're in Provo and you want to get outdoors, you're going to have easier access. If you go up Provo Canyon, you can get really good access to the reservoirs that are up there. So if you're into fishing or boating, you're going to have better access to those reservoirs. And there's going to be a ton of trails there as well. So really, when it comes to outdoor recreation, you've got easy access no matter which city you're living in. And that's kind of one of the best things about living here in Utah, is you've got great access to the outdoors pretty much no matter where you live. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about schools. But before we do that, make sure to give me a thumbs up here on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already subscribed, and make sure to get in touch with me if you're making a move here to Salt Lake City or to Provo or any of the surrounding areas. I love hearing from you guys. Absolutely reach out to me, call me, text me, or email me. Get a hold of me any way that you need to, so we can have a chat about the type of home and lifestyle that you're looking to have when you make your move here. Let's jump into schools. The schools in Provo, admittedly, are going to be better. Provo School District does rank higher than the Salt Lake City School District. So overall, if you want better schools, Provo is going to take the cake on that one. It just barely though. Salt Lake City does have, you know, a somewhat decent school system if you're in the downtown area. It's not the best, but it's also not the worst. So Provo is going to have a little bit better access for better schools. I will say though that Salt Lake has some very well-known private schools. So if you're leaning towards the private school route, you might want to consider Salt Lake a little bit more heavily, because you do have better access to those private schools. So guys, that wraps up our video here. If you enjoyed this content, give me that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, reach out to me if you're making that move here. And until next time, I'll catch you then.